to the Summit on Globalization of Human Capital and Asia Pacific Federation of Human Resource Management Congress. The summit is guided by Bureau of Employment and Vocational Training and organized by Ziqiang Foundation of Science and Technology and Chinese Human Resource Management Association. Today, it is our great honor to invite Mr. Yufang Guo, Deputy Minister of Council of Labor Affairs, to open the summit for us. Please welcome Deputy Minister Guo.
Good morning. Welcome to this seminar. It's my great honor to stand here on behalf of the Council of Labor Affairs to extend my sincere welcome to all of you. And also I would like to, on behalf of my boss, Minister Wang, because today is coincidence, it's the opening day of my Congress. So as you understand, our Congress is very tough. So my boss cannot come here to join with you. Oh my God, I use the tough of my Congress. It's a bad news because, maybe it could be an excuse for the Congress to cut my budget. So I'm afraid maybe next year we have no money to fund this seminar again. This is a wonderful occasion to invite so many human resources professionals and specialists to join with us. And it's a nice opportunity for us to face-to-face to discuss the same topics and to share with the different experience and technologies. And the most important, I'm convinced that a seminar will reach some conclusion and which is much benefit, especially for my councils in the future when we make decision in terms of the human resources. As you understand, Taiwan is a small island, so we lack of the natural resources. But fortunately, we have a very good human resources. So this is the main reason why we can create so-called economics miracle or even the political miracles in the past. As the Council of Labor Affairs, we're responsible for the employment and the vocational training. So we have a sub-organization, the BEVT. This organization also responsible for the vocational training. So now currently in Taiwan, our labor forces total, in terms of population, is about 10.7 in Taiwan. Among them, I think almost 96% of those people are employed. And unemployment people are about 470,000 people. So our unemployment rate is about 4.41 last month. And I predict that by the end of this year, unemployment rate will decrease, I think maybe 3.99, we hope. What means the BEVT has to provide the services for 10.7 people. So for those who are unemployment, the BEVT has launched a lot of the measures to help them to upgrade those skills to, I think, to help them to find a job. So it is the pre-employment training. So under the BEVT, we have 6 public vocational training centers who are responsible to provide the different various training courses for employment people. And you understand that the public vocational training, the training opportunity is not enough. So we also contract with the private training institutes to help us. So unemployment people, they can come to our centers to make a review or make an assessment and learn to satisfy their needs, and they can bring our vouchers to the public, the private training institutes. And those who are employment workers, they receive the pre-employment training. They can receive the subsidy from the government, and also they can receive the living allowance for 6 months from the government. As for the employment, we also provide job training for those peoples. So in Taiwan, we understand that more than 97% of the enterprise is belong to small and medium-sized enterprise. So for those big enterprise, they have a capability to conduct the training courses for themselves. So the Council of Labor Affairs can help them to subsidize them up to 80% of the training cost. And for those, I just mentioned that's about 97% of the small and medium-sized enterprise, they cannot afford to conduct their own training courses. So the BVT also contract with the local university or senior high school or private training institutes, and to subsidize them up to even 100% of the training cost. So the total amount of the unemployment people who can receive those training is about 55,000. So this is our responsibility. The Council of Labor also understand that human resources is a crucial factor of the country to face the challenge of the 21st century. So the next year, we will change our name. And the BVT also have a chance to change our name. Council of Labor Affairs will upgrade from council into the Ministry of Labor, and BVT also will change name as the Workforce Development Agencies. But this means not only we change the title, but we hope that we can increase our function and performance. So it's a good news for us. So we will try our best. We hope that we can upgrade the workers' skill and to help them to find a job. So our slogan is better training and good job. So 5 minutes is not enough to explain in detail. So I would have said again that I will extend my appreciation to you to welcome to join us in this seminar. So traditionally, we always say that when we want to extend our appreciation, we say that thanks a lot. But today I think thanks a lot is not enough. So I will say that thanks a million or thanks a billion. So I will send my best regards to you and wish the seminar was successful, and especially for our foreign guests. I think hope you enjoy when you stay here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Guan. Our next honorable guest is Dr. Ming-Jer, Chairman of Ziqiang Foundation of Science and Technology, to speak to us. Please welcome Dr. Xu.
Deputy Minister Guo, President Tao, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, welcome all of you to this conference. An ancient Chinese wise man, Confucius, once said, "It is certainly a great pleasure to have friends coming from far away." 有朋自远方来，不亦乐乎。Indeed, it is a great pleasure to meet you all, especially those foreign guests coming from abroad. Here, I would like to express gratitude to the Bureau of Employment and Vocational Training for giving Zhijiang Foundation this opportunity to organize this conference. Since its establishment, Zhijiang Foundation has been dedicated to the training of the technical personnel. Also, we are very experienced in organizing the international conference. This year, we are honored to work with Chinese Human Resource Management Association to jointly organize this conference. After several months of hard work from both sides, today we proudly present this conference to you. I firmly believe this conference will be a very successful one. The theme of this conference is building a dynamic workforce in the changing frontier. International renowned experts and expertise are invited to attend this conference all over the world. Include 3 keynote speakers from the United States and more than 20 session speakers from, let me name the country. From the States, Japan, Singapore, Belgium, Malaysia, Switzerland, Australia, Hong Kong, and mainland China. I think they share their experience and insights will be very, very beneficial to all the persons who attend this conference. Also, here I would like to express my sincere thanks to all speakers and the moderators of this conference. Would all the speakers and the moderators stand up so that everybody can see you? All speakers, please stand up. Please give them big hand to welcome them. Okay. Also, I would like to express our many sponsors who make this conference possible. With all the sponsors, please stand up too. That's what?
在职场上，请起立，让我们为大家鼓掌一下。
Thank you. My hearty thanks to you all. So finally, have a good day and enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Xu. Next, please welcome Ms. Dorothy Tao, Chairperson of Chinese Human Resource Management Association. Please welcome Ms. Tao.
Deputy Minister Guo, President Xu, distinguished delegates, guest speaker, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chinese Human Resources Association, I would like to express my sincere welcome to all of you, and it is a great honor for the association to have chance to co-host the 2011 Summit of Globalization of Human Capital and the Asia Pacific Federation Human Resources Management Congress in Taiwan. And the Chinese Human Resources Association, Management Association, is the most representative and the leading human resources organization in Taiwan, which has long been devoted to the globalization and the development of Taiwan's human resources. And on behalf of SGHRMC, I would like to express my greatest appreciation to the World Federation of People Management Association, the Asia Pacific Federation of Human Resources Management Association, Society of Human Resources Management, and Zhiqiang Foundation of Science and Technology for their great support and valuable contribution so that we are able to host this important summit in Taiwan. And for the next 2 days, I hope this summit will provide you with a good opportunity for opening a new dimension of your professional areas. And we are also, today we are also honored to have all the delegates from the member countries of the Asia Pacific Federation of Human Resources Management. I would like to use this opportunity to introduce them and welcome them to all of you. So, 现在呢，我要介绍我们来自亚太地区的贵宾，也就是我们亚太人力资源联盟各国的会员代表们。请大家，我待会儿念到他们名字的时候，请各位用热烈的掌声来欢迎他们。对不起，这样我看不到我的名字。可以给我个灯吗 ？OK， 好，谢谢你。Okay, so I will welcome the delegates from our member countries. I will start with the delegates from Australia, leading by Mr. Peter Wilson. Please stand up. 请热烈掌声欢迎他们。And the delegates from Hong Kong, leading by Mr. Francis Moak. Mr. Moak is also the chairman of the Asia Pacific Human Resources Management. Okay, then I would like to introduce Mr. Ernesto Espinosa from the Philippines. Let's welcome him. Okay, and I would also like to welcome Mr. Andrew Cox from Saudi Arabia. And next one is a challenge for me, Mr. Ratish Ujitong from Sri Lanka. Welcome. Okay, and Mr. Chapong Wongsak from Thailand. Also, the delegate from Beijing, from China, Wu Jinhua 先生，欢迎。OK， 当然还有在座的各位来自台湾的代表们，请给自己一个掌声。非常谢谢大家，也祝福大家在这2天的学习有愉快的学习。And to all the delegates from overseas, I wish you a memorable stay in Taiwan and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Kang. Once again, thank you for all our distinguished guests and the representative from each country flying to Taiwan to join this year's summit. We would now like to start our first keynote section. The section topic is Competitive Dynamic and Agricultural Perspective, Implication of Global Talent Management. The speaker is Professor Ming-Jer Chen of University of Virginia. We will first welcome our moderator, Dr. Ming-Der Xu, Chairman of Zhiqiang Foundation of Science and Technology, to start the section for us. Please welcome Chairman Xu.
It is my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Ming-Jer Chen. This morning, I just found out that we both graduated from University of Maryland. Dr. Chen is a leading authority in strategic management He is well known for his pioneer work in competitive dynamics and his expertise in Chinese Western business strategy and execution. He is a chair professor at the Lawler School of Business, University of Virginia. He also holds honorary appointments at several top universities around the world. Also, Dr. Chen has extensive corporate teaching and consulting experience. I can go on and on to read a long list about Dr. Chen's distinguished backgrounds, but I think all of you would prefer to hear from Dr. Chen himself. So let's give a big hand to welcome Dr. Chen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Xu, for your very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, and friends and colleagues from different parts of the world, it is my greatest honor to be here with you, to share with you some of my thoughts on competitive dynamics and agriculture management, and their implications for the global talent management and competition. As a business educators in business strategy, I have almost taught 4,000 MBAs and EMBAs in the United States and Asia for the last 20 years. Certainly, I think this topic is of great interest to me. For those of you who have listened to my previous speech, you know I never stand on the top of the podium. So let me just walk down the aisle. It is especially a personal pleasure for me to return home. I was born in a very small city in Taitung. Do you have anyone from Taitung? Taitung? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Actually, this is the first time I have ever encountered someone from my native town. I was born and raised there until I was 17, and this very humble beginning has fundamentally reshaped or shaped my life. And over the years, I very much appreciate this view, from the margin, this view of the world from the margin. Even today, in many ways, I'm very much at the center of the global mainstream. But my thoughts and actions have continued to be shaped by this marginal view. And before I left Taiwan, I also have a great fortune to study with a Chinese master and all those Chinese classics. And in fact, master just passed away in March at the age of 105. And over several years, I had the opportunity to be exposed to the Edard, which is considered as the peak of the Chinese civilization between 772 BC and 222 BC. And as an example, I had to read 16 out of the 21 most famous philosophers and thinkers around that time, and including Zhang, I still remember the original work plus 11 interpretation I had to read 7 times before I left Taiwan. And over the last 20 years, as the Dr. Xu just mentioned, I was 14 years, behind Dr. Xu. After I graduated from the University of Maryland, I also have had a great fortune over the last 20 years to teach at 3 top business schools of the 3 the great universities. And first, Columbia University, and then the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and now at University of Virginia's Dalton School. And these three schools actually has one thing in common. They were either founded or once led by a U.S. president or one of the founding fathers of the United States. Dwight Eisenhower was the president of Columbia before he went to the White House, and Benjamin Franklin founded the University of Pennsylvania, and Thomas Jefferson founded the University of Virginia. And because of this very unique background and experiences, so I very much commit myself to make the world smaller by bridging the gap between the East and the West, as well as between the scholarship and the practice. And some of you may know, last year I co-founded this $1 management program with ACES, the founder, Stanley Hsieh, and which is very much, with the attempt to minimize this gap between the scholarship and the practice. And in terms of the East and the West, I think the gap in many ways even more severe. Over the last few years, I also have this opportunity to speak around the globe. 3 years ago, I had a chance to speak among 3,500 business leaders in São Paulo and Buenos Aires in Latin America. And my co-speaker included people like Jack Welch and Rudy Giuliani. And the biggest concern, and then after I finished that, I flew to Milan and speak with Chris Patton, the EU commissioner, and also Kenichi Ome, from Japan. And the biggest concern among those talks was very much the China threat. And after I finished the speech engagement, I flew to Beijing. My co-speaker was China's Larry King, Larry Land, and the title of his talk was "Colonization of China by Western Multinational Firms." So I think in these two continents, I play a very interesting role in trying to minimize the differences. And before I present my talk, and I want to use the Chinese to say, today I came here with with a great fortune and with a very pure heart of appreciation and blessing. And I want to use Chinese, 感恩, 惜福, 惜缘. And I think that's how I feel that the opportunity to have a chance to speak. And maybe you were wondering, and I will explain to you, perhaps I'm the only non-HR person in the entire audience, and you may be wondering what happened, and perhaps I can share with you my own interpretation. I think the first things I learned in the U.S. is that Americans always begin a talk with a joke, and the Chinese, on the other hand, always begin with apology. And given my balanced, Chinese and American background, I would like to share with you a few jokes, but I would also like to apologize in advance. So how many of you remember the 2006? When was how many of you like soccer? The World Cup soccer. Okay, good. So where was the World Cup soccer 2006 held? The one before the South Africa, Germany. I don't have anyone. I was invited to give a speech at the closing ceremony, of the World Cup soccer, and also watch the finals. And given my, I think it's 要暗一点，那个颜色出不来。对。Given my background in strategy and competition, I compare the different teams in the cup. Here is my observation. The English team. Depending on the wind, the striker's position may vary. The German team. Radical, efficient, unstoppable, the ball speed may reach 297 kilometers per hour. The Italian plane. Iron defense, the small ideas in midfield and passes to striker and penalty. The Brazilian plane. 我们讲升85哈。No comments. The Australian plane, before they changed the coach. They managed to lose the game by themselves and no help is needed. The French plane. In their plan, they try all the possible hypotheses. Maybe they forgot the goal. The Mexican plan. The red dot is not the ball, it's the referee. The Venezuelan plan. They stay at home, they watch the others on the TVs. The 2000 Okinawa Summit. The Prime Minister Murray wanted to converse with President Clinton in English. So, he practices a few basic sentences. How are you? Fine, thank you. And you? Me too, thank you. At the summit, for whatever reason, perhaps Mr. Murray was too nervous. He greeted, who are you? And Mr. Clinton, in the typical Bill Clinton style of smile, I'm a husband of Hillary Clinton. And Mr. Murray replied, me too, thank you. All is fair in business. A shop was dismayed when a brand new business much like his own opened up next door and erected a huge sign which read the best deals. And he got even panicked when another competitor opened up on his right and announced its arrival with an even larger sign reading the lowest prices. And the shopkeepers, the panic until he got an idea. He put the biggest sign of all over his own shop. It reads the main entrance. The second things I learned in the US is rather than just teach or give speech with the conventional kind of lecture style, as you can tell, I very much want to engage in a conversation with the audience, even in front of 3,500 people, like this. And so the focus is not so much on the content, but it's very much on the process. And it's not so much about what I think. I think it's much more important what you all think. And truly we together, we build this learning community. And some of the people may think, this is what called the case teaching method, is the Socratic kind of approach. But if you truly read, Confucius' writing, they're all in dialogues. So to me, I think this form of conversation is truly the best of the East and the West integration. And I always like to start with the three, what I call the most naive questions. The first is, why are we here? The second, why should we care? And then the third is, how much do we know? Before we get into the conversation, I would like to get very quickly, how many of you coming from overseas? Okay, thank you. How many of you are still in the graduate school or are students? Okay. How many of you are professors or academics? Okay. So you're the only one, yeah? Okay. Good. So I think I'm going to see a slide. Now finally I spot you right there. Yeah. And also, for those of you, I assume, are very much HR professionals, right? Could you please let me know how many are you from the IT sectors, information technology, 从高科技? Come on, and this TSMC is right there. I know the two rows. You know, okay. How many of you are in the financial services? Okay. And how about from the traditional manufacturing? Okay. Any from the government? Okay, good. Okay. So I want to pose this question because you may be wondering why I'm invited. Somewhere perhaps one reason is I'm the Dr. Xu's 学弟, but I feel like I'm very much an outsiders, and I'm an outsider because I am my specialty is in strategic management or business strategy, not in HR. And however, I'm an insider because of my Taiwanese background. And also, perhaps some of you may not know, I almost became an HR professional working for the multinational firms. But instead, I decided to leave the country to pursue my PhD in the United States. Otherwise, I might be perhaps in the audience with you today. And so to me, I very much consider, part of your group. And secondly, I also feel, perhaps like you, that strategists tend to underappreciate, and I may want to reserve the term of greatly, the importance of HR professionals and their role in business. If that's truly how you feel, I would like you to share with me, to address those questions. But before we do that, I also want to say, as a strategist, I am a strong believer of this notion of the power of one. We, as a professional or strategist, is not clear unless we can crystallize all the different things we want to do, or all the different ideas we have, or all the contacts we have, just into one. We're not clear. So let me share with you one example. My first MBA from Columbia, who became, and actually the class of 1994, who became a CEO of a public company of the United States. And he has a very one simple management philosophy or approach. It's called the 3-4-5. He will hire 3 individuals and pay the salary of 4 and get the productivity of 5. Does this sound simple? I'm wondering, is it difficult to execute? I will ask, what do you think? 3-4-5.
I think this is the most ideal result if we can do that. But if that's effective, we should try our best.
Okay. I'm wondering. 我用这叫3-4-5法则。你们觉得难在哪里？ It's very easy to say, and also it's very ideal. But I'm wondering, what are some of the difficulties in execution? Any comments? Okay, how do you distribute the salary? And then what else?
I think distribution is one thing, and how you is another question for all distribution is how do you reward those performances? Okay,
it's not only that, reward those 3, and what do you think the rest of the organization may feel?
There are other people? Or
yes, there are other people. There are other people may not have this kind of pay scale. Would that be workable?
Then it becomes the ratio is 3-4-5, or it will be a 3-6.
Okay, that's a separate story. Okay, we have Ms. Wu of TSMC, who is in charge of the recruiting. How do you recruit the three? What are some implications?
You mean how to recruit the three?
Yes. How do you want to find the three that can deserve to be paid 33.3%, above the market rate?
I think we should define the job requirement and the competency and the qualification.
How do you define competencies?
It depends the job content. If we need to hire a technology talent,
okay.
we need to know what kind of skill he need.
Okay.
He should need.
Okay.
Right.
Do you consider the strategy at all? I'm a little bit discouraged. You don't completely ignore the strategy. Do you consider the strategy at all?
Of course, all talent recruiting plan need to link in with our business needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's almost the precondition. Okay. What else? What are some other challenges? What are some other areas? Do you have anyone in charge of exit interviews? What happens if one of the three decide to move on, to leave the company? Huh?
Career development.
Career development. And how, okay, help me here.
Okay, you mean, is this interview, right?
Yeah.
So somehow people, they design what they want.
Okay,
right?
good. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? 我们有中国大陆来的朋友，对不对？哈，那个像现在在中国大陆那边很多这个 turnover， 对不对？那你觉得如果这三个这一流的人才，如果他们离开的话，会是什么样的结果？
谁想回答？我来讲啊，应该说呢 ，retention key talent retention 目前是一个 very critical element in HR management in mainland China now.
Okay. Would you be able to share with us just one thing you think is the most important in talent retention in the Chinese market? Just one. I know you have many ideas, but I'm very much because I myself is an 一招半市场天下, so I only know one thing.
这是很难回答的一个问题。如果你只说一个因素的话，应该说，不同的 industry、不同的 category， 然后不同的 level。I would say, in my opinion, is training and clear and career development path. That would be critical for the people. That would. I think I will rate number one factors.
Certainly, this is just one example, of this notion of the power one. By the way, I'm wondering how many emails do you have a day? 50. You're lucky. How many of you have more than 100? Okay. How about 200? Okay. 500. Which the first email you reply? Just one. From my wife. Only one. So I think you're very clear in terms of your key stakeholders and which one is the primary one. Okay, good. I think that, so certainly I think this notion of the power one is a very simple idea, but somehow I think it's very applicable, can help you to apply to many things. So I'm wondering, now I want to come back to the HR context. If there's one key challenge in your job, which almost make you difficult to go to sleep or fall asleep, what is it? Just one key challenge. What do you think?
One key challenge of what?
Of the HR, as an HR professional today.
Okay, I'm Vicky from TSMC as well. I'm a recruiter at this moment. So one key challenge for HR for me, for most concern is how to recruit the most hyper talent for my customer, which means line manager.
Okay, so it's still recruiting side.
Yes.
And okay, Anything else?
Succession plan.
Would you be able to be even more specific? What kind of succession plan? Is the very top, or the middle level, or even lower level?
Actually, it's for the whole organization. Each function, we should have the succession plan.
Okay.
So once the person was not satisfied for the job or threaten the company, then we already have the succession plan.
So you always have the people to kind of rotate. If someone just decide, one of the three decide to move on, in addition to the career development, you have a very, strong succession plan to the leave that may help to increase your perhaps, bargaining power. Anything else? How about, friends, from overseas? So what is the one thing which make you feel like most challenging in today's, the environment?
Surviving the global uncertainties.
Would you be more specific? What kind of uncertainties are we talking about? If you are going to point one uncertainty, which truly just make you wondering, or even feel kind of, you do not know what to do within your particular kind of, the job situation, what kind of uncertainty you're concerned the most?
In my country? Or?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's youth unemployment. The next generation.
But unemployment, to some extent, I don't think is uncertainty. I think that's the known fact for almost...
employment for them is very uncertain.
Okay. Within that, if you think like one reason caused the unemployment become uncertain, what is that uncertainty?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So basically, you very much identify unemployment as one uncertainty you feel the most challenging and so on. But what would be the contributing factor or the contributing factor which may lead to unemployment from your point of view, which is the most uncertain?
Well, the acquisition of skills and confidence, being able to do things for themselves. People are unemployed, they clearly are caught, they're trapped.
Okay. Anything else I want to share with you are from Saudi Arabia, from different parts of the world, right?
Yes, major challenge would be the quality of supervision. If we're talking about retention of people, then the argument is that people leave their boss rather than the organisation. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on the quality of direct supervisors.
Okay, good. Anything else? I still want to come back to TSMC, because to some extent I think a lot of the, perhaps in the high performing side, and especially I'm wondering what from your viewpoint is the one most serious challenge, perhaps personally rather than organizationally, for any of you. Yes.
I think our challenge is to make it a high performance team and also a great place to work.
Okay. I'm wondering how many of you feel like your contribution, the HR's contribution to the organization is undervalued? Just one? You're truly lucky. So you don't feel like your importance within the organization is underappreciated. But it's kind of interesting. Coming from the strategy side, I feel like you must feel like, because you are very much in the supporting role. How many organizations that you truly play a central role in terms of the developing the company strategy? And I personally think that's really the role that the HR should play. Should be part of should be called strategic partner, rather than just, the boss set the strategy and then we just execute. We just become. How many of you think that the role of HR administrators, basically managers, just manage the different systems. How many of you feel like that? So how about the rest? How do you think the role of HR within your organization? Jordan?
Yeah, I think we treat ourselves as a change agent to shaping the company's culture and also to make things happen. Yep.
Okay, you consider you as a change agent.
Yes.
And who decide the destination of where you want to change to?
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader.
Follow the company strategy.
So basically, the company set the strategy, and then this is the future of your organization. So you just be responsible for the change.
I would say the CEO and the company set the goal. We decide the which approach we will bring our people to the goal.
What if the goals are unattainable? Meaning, it is not possible to push the organization to that. Would you say to your boss, say, no, this is too much? I don't think we currently have the HR capability or organizational capability to execute that. Do you think you have the courage to say that?
Hard to say that.
You have to say that.
It's hard.
It's hard, okay. Okay, why do you think it's hard?
To tell the truth, nothing but the truth should pay the price.
Wow, okay. Okay, how about if a strategy is developed and proposed to you and you usually feel that you underutilize your capabilities, would you say the same thing? The one is one is underutilized, another is overutilized.
Yes.
Would you say to your boss, say, no, I think, the way you move the company, I think we can do better than this. Would you say that?
Should balance the courage and also to your personal job.
Your personal jobs. Okay. I keep you nodding the hand. 你一直在摇头，你觉得？
I'm sorry, I disagree with the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, actually,
a gentleman.
A gentleman. Okay, sorry, CY.
I thought the HR function is most civilized, civil people within the organization.
Actually, for my opinion, I'm not the yes lady for the HR position. So when the company had a strategy coming out from the top management, then we will consider about the strategy. Then we will get back to them and say, this is what you think. Then I give you the presentation. Okay. Then you know what is the capacity now the company have, the human resource have the point of view. Then we also will analyze, say, if we go this way, the company will become disaster. The people will go. Then you can get the result. Yeah. So we will propose the new one. Then we also provide the alternative. Then we say, how about we do this? Then after 2 years, we can reach the target.
Okay.
Then we propose another kind of strategy.
Okay.
Then we become the business partner. We think like businessmen. Then we know what is the business move on. Then we know what is the businessmen know what's happening in the market. Then also HR knows. So when the whole market move to there, then also HR is ready for there.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm wondering. I have been reading the newspaper in Taiwan. The biggest concern at the country level seems to be 人才流失, the loss of the talent. How many of you feel that's an issue? That's an issue. That's a concern. That's a challenge. Okay, would you be able to share and elaborate? Yes.
I'm not a HR director or HR manager.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm providing
because I would really like it because like I say, I would like you to break out of the box, truly think beyond the HR. I think that's the key. Otherwise, you will never be able to communicate, with your boss or your strategist.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm running a consulting firm.
Okay.
So the core competency of the consulting firm is human resource. Right. The consultants I have. Depends on how many consultants I can get and how good they are. I can explore my business to different industries or different countries.
Right.
So I think it's a top issue to Taiwan that how can we keep the talents locally and how can we attract talents outside of Taiwan to join Taiwan company.
So basically, there are two issues. I think the first issue is how do you keep those talent in Taiwan?
How to retain them?
But someone will never approach me.
Because you were most of the time.
I'm just joking because 主才这样还是主才嘛, right? Okay, right. So the second issue is that and how. So the first one is how to keep, and the second one is how to even recruit better talent to come to Taiwan.
Not necessary to come to Taiwan. For example, if I'm going to extend my footprint, my business to other countries, to mainland China, I want to hire local consultants.
Okay. So how would you consider, do you feel any pressure from China?
A lot.
How big the pressure is?
If I just focus on the Chinese market, Taiwan market,
right,
the pressure is just mediocre.
It's very, still very peaceful, right?
It's very peaceful. But if I forecast my future business to Chinese market, then that will be my top issue.
Will be your top issue.
Yes.
What are some of the concerns or issues that, from your viewpoint, why suddenly China becomes, a challenge, from your business?
Because Chinese domestic consulting firms, they are rising.
Okay.
So originally, some businesses, they want to give to foreign companies,
right,
including Taiwan.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that's yeah. Mm-hmm.
But now
they have to get used to it.
Okay.
Because I think I can very much speak, as this, because I also, actually, there's Dr. Xu, I was invited in 1997 to teach all the management professors in mainland China. At that time, only 54 MBA programs at the Tsinghua for 11 days. And in order to recognize my contribution, they even gave me Zhu Rongji Sujia, the book 12, the Tsinghua Shi, the 6 books. So I want to come back to your questions. Yeah.
Okay. So if we cannot provide equally good or even better service to Chinese clients, why they will come to me? They just adopt the local consulting firms.
Okay. So at least let's just put aside those Western multinational consulting firms aside. Mm-hmm. Even among the Chinese, the local Chinese consulting companies are at least the competence have been developing very rapidly, which put a lot of pressure on you.
Exactly. Originally, my company just was competing against Hong Kong companies or Singapore companies, but now my competitor is just at several top leading consulting firms.
In mainland China.
In mainland China, yes.
Okay, good. Any other things, consider, the things that you feel, most, truly the challenge and even the 人才流失的问题. What are some of the other concerns? What do you think? What do you think? Yes.
Actually, I was working in the foreign company. I was engineer, okay, and I encountered a problem is that the working environment in Taiwan in technical part, we got a very severe, very serious, we got a very, very big problem that we need to work a very long time, but actually, although human resource part try to confront us, yeah, but actually we are very, we got a very, not, how to say,
一个中文讲没有关系，我帮你翻译。
突然没准备好 ，OK，
没有关系，你直接就用最自然的方式。
我觉得就是在以台湾，我之前是科技业，所以在台湾科技来讲的话是，比较一个非常竞争激烈的一个环境，所以即使是人力资源部门可能试着安抚我们，然后可能也许会让我们比较舒服，但事实上整个环境对我们工程端来讲的话，是一个非常艰苦的环境。
Okay. Let me just translate very quickly back to our the guest. So basically, this gentleman used to work for the high tech the industries, and because of the highly competitive environment, even though HR trying their best, trying to provide all the compromise flexibility, but somehow because of the declining environment in providing support and also attract the talent, so become almost mission impossible. Okay. Any other comments? Let me switch to the next one, and I want to share with you. And as I think some of you may know, I was elected 2 years ago to lead the Academy of Management, which is considered the most prestigious management scholar organization in the world. We have almost 20,000 members in 109 countries. And this year, as the program chair, I had the privilege to decide the theme for the conference. So this is what I decided is the West meets East, enlightening, balancing, and transcending. 就是西方与东方相遇 ，enlightening 就是启迪 ，balancing 平衡 ，transcending 超越。I'm wondering, why did I choose this theme? And much more importantly, what is the relevance to you? Why do I choose this theme? What's the relevance to you? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? What do you think?
I have no clue.
Why summary? I think you should on the front line. And I think that's really, to get into the heart of the problems that, Taiwan was facing. And to me, I spent a lot of time in the mid-90s working with Hong Kong, professionals. And I think Taiwan is going through the similar kind of, the phase as in the mid-90s in Hong Kong. I'm wondering, why did I choose this theme? What do you think?
I think because we are facing a globalization and the cultural difference between West and East, how to do a balancing and toward how to do a good job in the globalization.
Okay. Would you be able to help to define what do you mean by globalization from your viewpoint?
Maybe find a standard like
a standard?
Yeah, to can differentiate in different countries, but they have a common thing.
Okay. So basically, there's an international standard, but at the same time, you also have local differences. Yes. So to you, globalization does not mean the global Americanization.
Yeah,
That's a lot of Americans feel like that should be the case. You know, we have the best practice, we apply all over the world. No discussion, no appreciation for the local differences. So you don't think that should be the case? Okay. How about from your viewpoint, what are some of the challenges for the West meets East? You are very much considered as a part of the Eastern world, right? What do you think from your interaction with the Westerners? What are the key, discrepancy from your viewpoint you think that perhaps, you would like to be, to be corrected? Is there any? Or you think people are very much alike?
I think the thinking logic.
The thinking logic?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way they exclude things.
Okay, the thinking logic is very clear. It's not a
different pattern.
The different pattern. Okay.
Yes.
Would you be able to provide one example? The thinking logic differences. Whether you have observed.
Yeah, I think the foreigners, they will think clearly and simply, and they speak the point. And maybe in Asia, we will speak a lot of story to illustrate one thing.
Okay, so to some extent, it's much more, one is more clear, just one after another, and versus, we tend to be more holistic.
Yeah.
We consider many factors. That's very interesting. Any other comments in terms of the differences between West and the East? Please don't feel, any. It took me 12 years in the United States to figure out how to say yes and no. As simple as yes and no. Yeah.
Well, I try to interpret West meets East. For HR's challenge is when people, employees with Western mindset meet the requirement from East top management. Because we try to balance when people, what they think about work.
Okay.
This kind of thing is changing. Because Western people or foreigners, they think work, how to get balance between work and real life. Yeah, but for top management, most of them still keep kind of Eastern thinking.
That's interesting.
Yeah, with high requirement.
Okay, so basically you observe there's a differences within the organization at the different levels. At the very top level, perhaps still very much, managed or lead by more traditional Eastern kind of approaches.
Yeah.
And when the system trying to become more global or even westernized.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Any other things? From this side, someone, rather than typing notes, would you want to share? What's the relevance to you? Or there's no relevance?
I think the people from the West and the East, when it comes to an issue in the office, and the Western people are probably more focused on what is right, what is wrong on the issue. And
very clear cut. Yes, no.
Very clear cut. The Eastern culture probably will be more
iffy.
Well, that's a good word, yeah.
为了给面子
Yes.
人情 right?
Really more focus on people, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And what's the implication for you within your own, company? Do you have any foreigners?
A very traditional business.
You're lucky, right?
Yeah, I'm lucky.
You're very homogeneous, in terms of, the how.
Well, that depends.
Okay. I would like to continue this with you all, but let's move on. I want to get to, the formal part of my presentation. First, the recent global financial crisis has exposed the structural weakness of the Western model, which has dominated the business world for many centuries. The reemergence of China and the acceleration of the globalization will have a profound impacts for the decades to come. And I want to emphasize, I use the term of re-emergence. And people in Wall Street still keep arguing whether China fall into this emerging market, but rather using the emergent or use the re-emergence, and I want to show you why. Secondly, in the search for a new global business model, the strategic acceptance and the integration of the best of the Western and the Eastern practices will be essentials. And I would truly like to invite you to think one step ahead, even your boss. Because that's really, if we are trying to predict, understand what's going on outside Taiwan. And thirdly, going forward, the business executives and the HR professionals in particular must proactively, I want to emphasize proactively, because I think the HR, just by definition, tend to be more reactive or even more conservative. I want to think proactively, develop an integrated strategic perspective of what I want to emphasize, competitive dynamics, and also the ambicularism, and must work to advance their own execution capabilities if they are able to outpace their rivals in a global talent competition. And I want to basically share with you the first, the China's re-emergence and its global implications. This is the share of the world global GDP adjusted by the purchasing power parity. 所以把 GDP 然后那个 purchasing power parity 做那个评价去做调整啊。And I use a very conservative, 6.8% growth rate by 2020. China's GDP adjusting by the PPP will outpace the U.S. Sorry, my apologies. Let me ask, why do I use the term of re-emergence? Why re-emergence? I think people in Taiwan should know this better. And even people in China use the term of emergence. Why is re-emergence? Yes.
A few centuries ago.
Okay, so basically it's 1820. What happened around that time? And actually before 1820, 9 out of the 10 centuries, China had more than 33% of the GDP adjusted by PPP, even more than what the US have today. I think that's exactly what I'm trying to make. Let me just give you one idea. If we just compare the global 500s, the China's total number is greater than the combined numbers of the 3 other BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, and India, and almost like 10% on the 2010 list. And what happened? So at this time, I think it is very clear that China represents as the factory of the world, providing all the sourcing supplies to help the U.S. market, which is very much 80% the service economy. And however, in 2020, I think they are going to have an intense competition between the two countries along the line of supplies, the resources, the jobs, and the talent. And I want to put this into in a global context in terms of what's going to happen. And let me just give you one idea. In 2008, the layoff in the US, the Citigroup, 75,000, the Bank of America, 35,000, JP Morgan, and so on. A Chinese recruit team with senior HR executives from 30 leading financial institutions in Shanghai took actions in London, Chicago, and New York. And in January 2009, the China Security Regulatory Commission, Chen interviewed 150 the senior financial managers on Wall Street. And then in Jianhui and the Baojianhui and the People's Bank of China also hunted aggressively for financial talents. And I think the situation is even going to get even more intense. So I want to put into a competition or the strategic perspective, what kind of talents that the Western multinational firms and the Chinese multinational firms are competing. So basically, to me, the one with the strategic perspective, the one has the cross-cultural appreciations, and the thirdly, the multifunctional experiences, and finally, will be able to execute locally. So exactly for this reason, I want to raise two questions. How effectively can enterprises deal with the escalating competition for talent as they engage in the global competition? And much more importantly, what kind of talent do companies compete for the most? So I would like to start thinking about it's not just talent competition or management, but also what kind of talents that people tend to compete more. And within this, and I would like to inject this strategic perspective for Chinese business in order to leapfrogging the global competition. The global financial crisis provided Chinese firms with a great opportunity to recruit talent people who had been working for the Western companies. And as a late entrance into the global competition, Chinese executive and HR professionals need a perspective that will allow them to blend the Chinese cultural advantages and the cutting edge of the Western strategic perspective and the systematic approaches to business issues. And so they can attract, develop, and retain the global talent, but also resolve some of the managerial problems. And this perspective, I think, is very important, should attune to the Chinese mindset and the Chinese business practice, and provide a platform for developing the enduring advantage that are difficult for competitors to imitate. And finally, I think completing the home field advantage. The next major battleground for global market is China. It is strategically important for Taiwanese companies to leverage their strengths to build a dominant market position in China first and then expand overseas. To differentiate the success in global competition, how can Chinese enterprises foster a culture-based strategic perspective that bridge the Chinese and the Western strengths? And I want to clarify, I very much use Chinese to refer to not just the PRC business, but also to all the 华人企业, to overseas Chinese, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Southeast Asian enterprises. Just give you, so I use that in a very general term. And certainly I think you can down to become much more specific. And next, I want to introduce this concept called the culture, strategy, execution, trial. As they move forward, the 华人企业 Chinese enterprise need to consider how they can integrate the culture and the execution advantage with cutting-edge strategic perspective to leapfrog competitors in the global business arena. Competitive dynamics which integrate the Chinese philosophy, and perhaps because of my own background, and the Western social enterprises represent a valuable perspective for thinking about global strategy and competition. And if there's only one slide for you to think about, very much as a follower of the Power of One, this is perhaps the slide. And certainly, the culture has two dimensions. The one is national culture. The second is the corporate culture, your own organizational culture. And then you have strategy and execution. I'm wondering, what do you think? I want to put forward this slide for you. What's the relevance for you? What do you think? What's your own interpretation of this trial? Where do you put your company? How does your company, balance the three? What do you think?
In my company, we are still trying to shape our culture. So
so the culture is still not set yet. Still developing.
Still developing.
Okay.
Still modifying.
And how about your strategy? It's very well set.
I think it's not clear enough.
It's still not clear.
Still not clear.
Okay. And the execution is strong, no?
Sure, strong enough.
Execution is strong, yeah. So your execution is strong, but the culture and the strategy not at the level you would like to have. Any other differences? I mean, what do you think? Yes, I want to see. How do you consider this? How do you interpret this trial? Yes. Oh, in teaching we call this cold call. But I think my call is very warm. I'm wondering how do you consider? Do you think certainly even some of you talking about the change in the culture, you are the change agent. So it's culture. So basically from the culture direct to the execution. Okay? And what do you think? How does your company balance among those three, or even integrate? The culture, strategy, and execution. Do you think a culture influence strategy or strategy influence culture? Huh? Why both ways? Consulting is selling for sure because you right? Okay.
Right. I think these three dimensions, they are interconnected. Because the strategy will definitely influence execution, and efficiency and
strategy influence execution.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, that's most of our HR professionals have been taken for granted is that because we set the strategy and we have to have our HR system in place.
Right, but that's just the first half of my statement.
Okay.
The second half is the execution result, the efficacy and efficiency will also go back to the strategy, how the strategies are defined.
Okay.
And
so sometimes it could be that you have the best strategy but not executable.
Yeah, it happens to my company most of the time.
Most of the time, how often? How often?
More than 50%.
More of that. Wow. Actually, it's not bad. But by the way, so you assume you have a strategy. So almost 50% of the company do not even have a strategy.
So
now you truly know what kind of things you are executing. A lot of times your boss have some ideas, and then you just put it into place. As a strategist, I may not even call it a strategy. Let's come back to it.
Yeah, I think I'm very lucky because first, size of my company is small, so right. the strategy board is right. very small, so we can make strategy quickly. But I think both strategy and execution, they're together will influence the corporate culture.
Oh, they two together back to influence corporate culture, right. rather than corporate culture influence.
So that's why I say it's two-way.
Okay,
direction.
That's interesting. Any other thoughts? What do you think? What do you think? You can take mine.
Yeah, actually, it's very correct. Culture, strategy, and execution. So I think the HR people should play a big role about the culture more than the others. The there are a lot of people there to prepare strategies. So I'm asking you the question. So you're asking a question from everybody. I'm asking a question from you.
Okay.
Right. What is your advice to the HR professionals?
Right.
There are 3 circles. So what is the most important circle that HR professionals should focus their strategies?
Good. Okay. I think this is a great question. Before I get to answer your question, I would like to solicit. How do you respond to this question? Yes. Wu Xiaojie,
Okay.
I'll come back.
I want to share TSMC practice about these 3 factors. I think in TSMC, we have the culture is our foundation. We say that in Chinese and 4个价值 core value ICIC， 我们任何的策略跟执行 action 都不能抵触我们的 core value.
Okay.
So the culture is very important.
So basically, she is saying that culture very much touch upon on the core value of the organization. So the strategy and the execution should not be in conflict with the core value of the organization. Okay.
Yeah, and then second one, strategy is the first important is all of our behavior cannot conflict our core value. We say that is culture, and the second one important is our strategy. You know, our chairman Morris Zhang, he's very intelligent. So strategy, we have clear strategy. Strategy is very, very important, but execution need to meet up with our strategy. If we don't have good execution, the strategy doesn't work out.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we are success, I guess.
Okay. How about the HR's function? Within this framework, what is the role of HR? I think that's very much, I think you're truly getting into the heart of the question. What do you think? What do you think? Zhang Xiaojie. Yeah. What is the role of HR within this framework?
I think there are 2 powers. One is the soft power.
Okay.
As HR we can play, and one is the hard power.
Okay, the soft power will be the cultural part.
Yes.
So the HR can help to facilitate the formation or even development of the corporate culture.
Yes,
okay?
Yes, that's my opinion.
So that's the first one. How about the hardware?
The hard power as a HR, as a strategic partner, I think we are the key. We can play the key role to support our business leader for their business success.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are a lot of approaches. Yeah.
Okay. Certainly, I'm going to use this to revisit this slide at the very end. But my short, the quick answer to you is very much I consider that HR can become a platform provider which integrate all those 3 components. And I think that should be the role HR should play. But unfortunately, that's not the reality today. So that's really why I think the HR can be much more, the aggressive within the corporate company, the structure. And I want to come back and I want to use the one final slide to show, what my vision of the HR's role, as very much a strategist. Okay. And let me very quickly go through the competitive dynamics. The Western, looking in the Chinese culture, the idea is very simple. Competitive dynamics claim competition is, first dynamic, the exchange of the moves and the counter moves between rivals is where the competition takes place. Okay? So I think some of you have been exposed to, say, Michael Porter's, 5 forces structure analysis, but this is a very different approach. And also, in the Porter framework, there's no culture. And secondly, the relative, each competitor is unique with its own characteristics and response patterns, and a pairwise comparison between the 2 firms offers a very informed perspective.
So here is when you are still thinking about competitive advantage, and I want to challenge that question. Why? Because competitive advantage is only temporal and transit. Any advantage gained by a firm through its actions will be negated over time by competitors' response. So basically, it's really just question, even challenge. This is very cutting. We are talking about really the cutting edge, the strategic perspective. So this is what I want you to be exposed to. So how can Chinese enterprise blend competitive dynamic with ideas from traditional competitive wisdom to think strategically about global expansion? And let me use Chinese to explain. 其实动态竞争讲的就是 the competition is truly just like one attack, one response. And basically, so from the attacker's viewpoint, you have to decide who is your primary competitor. And then you think if it's necessary, when and how quickly you want to respond, and how the strong the response should be. And on the other hand, from the opponent's viewpoint, when you face the attack from your competitor, whether you want to respond and when you want to respond, and you want to basically respond by one action or multiple actions, or whether you want to respond in the same position, or whether you want to respond in different position, or whether you want to engage in the group level competition, just involve the whole ecosystem to compete. All these are very much strategic issues. And all those questions can transform into a strategic thinking and become a research topic and to analyze, okay? So let me just provide one example. Gillette and the Schick, all compete, and then Duracell and Energizer. 这台湾是不是叫金霸王是吧？啊，经典好经典。然后 Energizer 呢？尽量好。Okay, and then so Gillette decided to acquire Duracell, and rather than just respond, Energizer decided to acquire the Schick. So the new reality becomes Gillette and Energizer become the head-on competitors. Okay. So to best defense is offense. Okay, so I want to introduce this notion of the AMC perspective is how to minimize. So exactly because of this reality, the strategy thinking is how to minimize competitive response. And I want to present a rival-centric view. Rival-centric views is the awareness, motivation, and capability perspective. Unless your opponent is aware of your moves and intentions, is motivated, and has the required capability, it won't respond. So that's a very simple kind of question you ask yourself. So the question for you is put yourself into the shoes of your rival in order to minimize your rival's attention and to minimize its motivation to retaliate as much as possible. If both are impossible, the firm must be ready and have the capability to defend itself when its rival retaliates. So the question for the Chinese company is how to use the AMC perspective to minimize competitive response from their local as well as your foreign rivals. And I think that's very much applicable to your consulting company, the cases. Okay, leapfrogging, 跳跃式的 your rival. Should truly just engage your rival in the whole market and leverage the experience and know-how to leapfrog. Let me skip this. I want to emphasize your opponent is only as strong as the weakest link in the value chain. Ideally, you want to leapfrog your rivals through disruptive technologies, new product or process, unrivaled HR systems, or creative reconfiguration of the value chains, and fundamentally change the rule of competition. I think this is very important. All the kind of things that you observe in the marketplace tend to be short-lived. Only you truly move into those internal processes, like your HR systems, or come up with disrupt technology, and you can fundamentally change the rule of competition. So how can the Chinese companies take the actions that are one step ahead of their local rival and foreign rival, and how they position in the global ecosystem? So visually, so this is how I would like you to start thinking about as either a Taiwanese company or as one of the Asian Pacific countries in light of the rise of the China. And how would you consider, global competition within the global business ecosystem? Any questions? Any questions? If not, oh, yeah. Thank you. Oh, okay. Sorry, there are certain implications for the CD perspective, but this is very important. If we change this notion of the rival-centric into the other-centric, I think that will have a direct implications for you as HR professionals. Develop and maintain a dynamic strategic perspective in organizing the HR task. And secondly, to take an other-centric approach by putting yourself in the shoes of your bosses, your colleagues, and other interesting parties where you're initiating and implementing HR practice. I think there's a term called Chinese 设身处地. Put yourself in the shoes of your other interesting parties. And then think one step ahead and predict the responses for others to the practices that you are about to implement. And certainly, I think you can consider how your other parties are likely to respond to the introduction of the HR practices. And literally, you can apply this notion of awareness, motivation, capability, in thinking about your execution. Let me just move to the MB culture perspective. Okay. By the way, what exactly is MB culture? I want to use the term of the 文化双融. Well, I think that the Chinese term is much more clear than the Western term, which tend to be. The idea is, and the cultural managers, today the world appears to be in transition. The East and the West both have their own strengths and weakness. The key for business leadership today is to get the best, and here's the key, and avoid the West from the West meeting East. And I think some of the things that we just discussed. So the ideal agricultural managers, if you have interest, I have 2 papers on this, just published in the Academy of Management Perspective, is the enlightened business person of the 21st century, who is characterized by qualities such as ability to balance the social good and the self-interest, and emphasis on both the trust-based and the legal relationship, again, West-East, and appreciation for the teamwork and individual star players. And here's very important things. An openness to new way of thinking and the ability to see the wisdom and the strengths and in other cultures and business paradigm. Ability to transcend, 超越, division around the globe. And finally, is a lifelong drive to reach the pinnacle, 是最极致的 of the professionalism, 就专业化 and humanity, 就是人文。因为其实现在这个人文其实是一个很大的挑战。Successful agricultural management, I can provide. How many of you know this company, Lincoln Electric? Okay. If not, I would encourage you to find out. I think they have the best HR practice from my viewpoint. Certainly, you all know the ACERs, the Stanley and Connie Ling, who used to work, ACERs here, and because of business leaders, and I just provide some examples. Lincoln Electric, let me share with you a few examples they did. Profit sharing with employees and higher their average pay. Promotion from within, lifetime employment guarantee. This is American enterprise but it's lifetime employment. Employee ownership of the company, and the balance and the share interest among all the key stakeholders, suppliers, customers, and partners. And it's most interesting, they even share the technology with competitors during World War II. And the balance between internal competition and cooperation, and between social welfare and individual entrepreneurship. This is a very interesting example. It's an American company. A seamless integration of the cultural strategy and, integration of the cultural strategy and execution trial. This is the most interesting. I use this case, this company, to teach in the US. The comments I always heard, this is the best form of capitalism. 这是资本主义最好的代表. When I use this case in mainland China, my opening question is always, is this a state-owned enterprise? 这是不是一个国有企业? And actually, the comment I always heard, this is truly the best socialist enterprise. So this company amazingly will be able to blend the best of the socialism, the best of the capitalism into one. So for a Chinese, they think this is the socialist enterprise. For American, they're so proud. This is the representative of American capitalism. So the implication of the agricultural perspective, let me just skip this and I will let you. This is the thing I want to emphasize. You can have the best strategy, but your corporate culture can eat your strategy alive. I want to just get to the conclusion very quickly. First, Chinese executive and HR professionals should create a sense of temporary advantage for sustainable advantage in the global community. And secondly, Chinese executive and HR professionals utilize the cultural strategy and trial as the perspective and as well as the perspective of competitive dynamics and agricultural management. And this is very, very important. To me, I think the global challenge and also opportunity for the Taiwanese and the Chinese business from the cultural viewpoint is this 人我和综合的思想, okay? Culture is about what? Sensitivity, 敏锐. Strategy is about focus, 专注. Execution is about persistence, 然后执行. The essence of competitive can be used internal and external balance. And also the essence of agricultural management is to seek the East and the West in integrations. So the firms need to value the organized culture and appreciate the diverse perspective from East and the West. The firm need to value its own talents as well as the local talent. Abandon this notion of the so-called best practice because it all depends, and adopt a practice that harmonize with those of the local cultures. So let me revisit this trial. I will explain in English. So basically, the culture is very much about your heart, and the strategy is about your brand, your mind, and the execution is your hands. And then very much want to correspond to the comments Ms. Wu made earlier. Culture is very much about 价值观, the value system, and the strategy is about the 方法论, is the systematic knowledge. And finally, execution is about how to put it into place. And the trial must be centered around the human, the humanity, the human beings, the individuals. And all those three elements have to be closely interconnected and tied together for the organization, to move forward. So I will use this trial, to explain this. So to me, I think, and then this is a feedback loop and the reflection. To me, I think this is truly, my view, which I think is happening and will happening even more. And I will encourage all our, HR professionals truly think beyond the box, think, beyond the horizon, think beyond Taiwan, and from the global viewpoint to think about how, within your own organization, you'll be able to integrate those three elements, similarly, and then all centered around, this human talent. Okay, we still have 2 minutes, and I can take questions. Questions? Yeah. Huh? Yes, absolutely. Because there have been a lot of the studies and observations, and for instance, like once you have the culture, the innovative culture in place, I think innovation will come very, very naturally. Yes, absolutely. Anything else?
Nobody has challenged it.
Huh?
Nobody has challenged it.
I'm not sure, because the formation of a corporate culture actually is a very long process. It takes 4 years.
I'm really with you. I really trust this should be the perfect track.
Yeah, and I want to say this is very much coming from informed strategy person, and I feel very strongly in terms of that should be the direction of the strategic management and the HR kind of truly just working together. It's very practical, I know. Yeah, and actually, I also have some assessment tools, those kind of things. Yes, absolutely. Any other comments? Yes.
I wonder if the best defense is often still true today, because from a Chinese perspective, if you watch the movie Year One and the Yongchun, it's always first mover disadvantage. When you move, you expose. So for Chinese martial art, they actually wait for your opponent to make.
It's like an Apple computer, right?
Yes.
So for a company like Gillette, and especially for the leaders. By the way, you should speak to my heart. I have all the different things I can show you. Under what condition the first mover will always pay off. Under what some other condition, 以静制动, will be a better kind of strategy. I think that deserves. Your point is very well taken. Okay. Any other comments? This side is quiet, and I want to balance. I have to come back to this. Anyone? How about yes, go ahead.
Thank you for your excellent speech. My opinion is that the real world is not that dichotomy, just divided as the East and the West. They are not the one.
And the East is not homogeneous either. And Chinese is also not homogeneous.
Yeah, even Chinese, yes. Chinese in mainland China, in Taiwan, in Singapore, different. Yes, right. And so I think besides the anti-culture, there are also another value called diversify,
right?
And exclusive, right? So how you can explain your model in the more diversified and more inclusive,
right?
I think.
Okay, that's a very good point. And actually, according to many studies, the Chinese 1 and 2 are very much Chinese generalization basis is 3 actually, the triad. 众人, you see 3 individuals. 三人行必有我师 is not only 3 teachers. The 3 is the basis for Chinese generalization. So basically, purely from the research viewpoint, this dyad can become the basis to study the whole network, the whole community. So I think that's not bad result. So the key thing of the West meets East, or this MB culture, the key is really on the transcending, the enlightening, balancing, and transcending. So basically is given the differences, what would be the implication for me? So for instance, like between the differences between, say, the mainland Chinese versus Taiwan, what would be the implication for the HR management in the Taiwanese context? So how can we learn from the other parties? That's always come into play. Okay. Yes.
I think the topic, the East meets West today, what I learned is I don't think it's racially or geographically nowadays. I think psychologically is more important.
Yes.
I work for a business consultancy, and I have a lot of business in China.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes the Chinese are more Westerners than us.
Yes, it's more capitalist than
foreigners.
Absolutely, yeah.
Take example, I like 3-4 years ago starting traveling to Shanghai, and I really hate to take a subway because, you know, like in Taiwan, you always wait until everybody get out of the subway, then people starting to get on, right? But in China, everybody tried to get in and out at the same time. So at first, I feel kind of puzzled and still even hatred to get on the subway whenever I have to travel in the subway. But later on, it's impossible because if I keep waiting, it's impossible to get on. It takes forever. Then I just join them and compete with them. But finally, I kind of, you know, once you blend in, you kind of enjoy it because it's true. It's very efficient. Everybody try to get on and get out of it together. So, I mean, but once you blend in, once you, as you say, you take advantage of both sides, you understand each other, I think the trial, the center will be bigger, then it was more beneficial to the company.
Right. Is there any other? I think my time is very much up. Let me close, you know, by two jokes. The first, you know, is a conversation with the Chinese ambassador and the French ambassador. So the French ambassador asked the Chinese ambassador, "What do you think about the impact of the French Revolution?" The Chinese ambassador replied, "It's too early to tell." And the second one is a conversation between a German consultant and American investment bankers. So American investment bankers ask, you know, they say, "Have you heard that China is going to change its accounting policy? So now we can book 关系," in this Chinese notion of connection, as an asset on the balance sheet. And the German consultant said, "No, I have not heard." And then the American investment banker went on to say, "But it requires you to amortize over 5,000 years." Okay, thank you so much, and I hope, you know, you and also your family and also your companies a great success. Thank you.
Thank you once again. Thank you, Professor Chen's excellent speech. Now we will have around 15 minutes coffee break. Please enjoy the refreshments we have provided for you. And before we go on to the break, I have a few announcements. This year, all section handout please download from the website. And also please visit our website to fill in the questionnaire after the section. And also please don't forget to visit our exhibition booth for your chance to win the first prize, which is the iPad. Tomorrow closing ceremony, we will have the lucky draw to pick up the winner. 接下来为茶叙时间，场外备有茶点，请各位嘉宾自行取用。另外，为响应环保，全部的讲义内容请自行上我们的网站下载。另外，活动满意度问卷也采线上方式进行。
Good show.
You want to take over?
You want to take over?
No.
Oh, sure.
I have to do that.
Okay. You do two?
You do mine.
Your session will be closed at 12.
12.
Yeah.
last 15 minutes.
请各位嘉宾尽速入座。
So you will go upstairs for the microphone? Oh, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the section. Now we'd like to move on to the second keynote section. The speaker is Professor Lawler of University of South California. First, we would like to welcome our moderator, Professor Paul Xu, Chair Professor of Ming-Jer University, to start the section for us. Please welcome Professor Xu.
Good morning. Distinguished speakers from abroad as well as domestic, and delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me today to play a role as a moderator for the next session. I think it's a great privilege for us to have the distinguished speaker, Professor Edward Lawler III, with us today. I just talked with Professor Lawler. It is not, I don't know whether it's coincidental or not. When Professor Lawler got a PhD degree from UCLA in 1964, I was working for my MBA at the same year at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. So one on the Midwest, another on the West Coast. But ever since then, I have become an admirer of Professor Lawler because I have read so many articles written by Professor Lawler. For me, I think you will agree, Professor Lawler is considered one of the leading experts, researcher, and thinker in management in general, and in human resources and organization in particular. So today, we are very fortunate to have Professor Lawler come here in person. Otherwise, even for me, I only have the opportunity reading his papers. So I'm very excited to meet with Professor Lawler. In addition, I don't need to say many things about Professor Lawler because you can read from the handout. But in addition to that, I have found many other things which is not included in the booklet. After Professor Lawler earned his PhD degree from UC Berkeley, he taught at the Yale University. And from 1979, he moved to Marshall School of Business. And also, he is now the distinguished professor of management in Marshall School of Business, University of Southern California, as we know. Now, many of you in the field, I think, have the knowledge that University of California has become well known and admired because it's a leading research in leadership. So many top-notch scholars have been teaching, researching at that institution. It considered the mecca of leadership, like Warren Bennis and many others. and others. So without further ado, please join me in giving hand to Professor Lawler. And today's topic is management reset, creating a build to change workforce. I think this topic is very germane and important for us in Taiwan as well as in elsewhere. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I've only been here once, and that was basically to change planes in the airport. It was a little hard to get a sense of the country based on that experience. So it's wonderful to be back and a real honor to be invited to join this program with such a distinguished set of speakers. I had a little trepidation or fear when I saw that I was going to be preceded by a strategy professor. Nothing against strategy professors, but I find sometimes they tend to spend much of their time either ignoring HR or beating up on HR as a poor contributor. Fortunately, we avoided that today. We had a very uplifting and informative talk about strategy and what HR can contribute, and really sets a nice foundation for me to move ahead with a little more specific thinking about strategy and HR and organization design and organizational effectiveness. So I really appreciate the really nice introduction that Professor Chen gave. I knew it was going to be all right when he talked about where he was born and where he's currently teaching. Turns out that I was born in Virginia and am now teaching here. So we have some similarity. We just reversed it a bit. And that leads me to my first question of the presentation is, how many people here were born in Alexandria, Virginia? None. So he and I share something else in common, but no one here. Yeah.
Virginia State University.
Yeah, okay. I will probably talk a little more and ask fewer questions than he did, but that should not discourage you from raising your hand or when I ask a question, responding. We'll still have people with microphones, and I'll leave some time at the end for questions, okay? Let's move ahead. And for me, it starts with defining the new normal. I was reading an article yesterday, actually, on the plane over, and a CEO was being interviewed in the article, and he was saying he was waiting to determine what the new normal is before he put his new strategy in place. So either he's missing something or I'm missing something, but I think there really is a new normal. And what it is a normal of rapid change, unpredictable change, and demands for new kinds of responsibilities on the part of corporations. And I think that is not just the new normal, that's the normal for the foreseeable future. If you wait for a change to a new form of stability and think the new normal is going to be a stable environment of some kind, and it's just a matter of figuring out what the new stability is, you'll never arrive at the new normal. Because my view, at least, is we've got a world now, because of globalization and technology, that is inherently, constantly in a state of change and fluctuation. Yes, it does affect some businesses differently than others, some countries differently than others, but I would argue that everybody at this point in time is subject to a continually changing business and social environment. The point that I didn't hear mentioned, I heard the first part of that mentioned in previous talk, not much attention to the broader social responsibility and environmental responsibility issues. And I see them coming on very strongly in Europe, somewhat less strongly in the United States, but certainly appearing there. And I even see some, at least writings in China about the environmental consciousness needing to rise, and more organizations being held accountable, not just for their financial performance, but for their social and environmental performance. The now common term, the triple bottom line. It's a tough world. It's a tough new normal. Rapid, unpredictable change and broader accountabilities for corporations. And my argument, and that's where the term reset comes from, is if organizations are going to be successful in this new environment, they're going to have to look differently, behave differently, and that a key player in that might be, and I think ought to be, the HR function. That is, it ought to help define what organizations of the future look like and how they can respond to the change that we see and the broader performance capabilities that are needed. I like very much the Time Magazine piece. It looked good in 2006, given the summer that we've seen in the Arab world and what we may see more broadly in some other places. I think it's particularly prophetic, not just from a societal point of view, that is the new interconnectedness and the impact of information technology, but what I think we're increasingly going to see in how organizations are managed and how the culture of organizations get built, how people are attracted. Information technology is going to produce things in the world of organizations that I don't think we can imagine now. It's going to change fundamentally, I think, the way we organize and structure corporations, the way we welcome employees, recruit employees, the way we train employees, the way we form cultures, all are going to be substantially impacted over the next decades, dramatically dictated and determined by what we can do with information technology. It's going to lead to forms of organizations that we can't even imagine today. And they're going to particularly, I think, challenge the HR function because they're going to lead to types of employment, roles, et cetera, that are unheard of today. We already have outsourcing firms around the globe that hire people for contractual relationships and key roles on temporary, part-time, virtual basis that are really revolutionizing a lot of the software writing industry and the information technology industry. If you haven't heard of Odesk, for example, it's a new form of organization that has made rapid gains in the information technology world. Okay. I want to contrast plan change with the kind of change that we need today. Traditionally, we've thought of change as an episode that occurs when an organization needs to implement a new strategy or change its direction, and in many organizations that has come along every 5 to 10 years. And it mostly has been bad change. That is, most traditional change efforts in corporations fail. 80%, some people estimate, some research would estimate, is the failure rate for traditional, what I'll call episodic change. The assumption of stability is critical in most strategies. The assumption, that is, that you can get a sustainable source of competitive advantage. That was mentioned in the previous talk, and I think correctly debunked as being realistic in today's rapidly changing world. But it's still common in most corporations. And in that world, people think of them, okay, if stable is here, what we need to do to solve our organizational problems is look at best practice in our industry and see what the winners are doing. Because in a stable world, that's probably what we need to do to gain at least equity with them, if not a competitive advantage. Obviously, there's a couple of problems with that. This cartoon, Bob Doonesbury is a favorite of mine. I don't know if you get him at all in your papers, but he often captures some of the dilemmas in management and the silliness of management. This is just an example. It's particularly bad to look for best practice in a world of change, because what's best practice today is very unlikely to be best practice tomorrow. Even if it is best practice tomorrow, as a later executor of it, it's probably not going to help your organization very much. Challenge, and it's a big one, is to get out ahead of what's going on and what other people are doing and look for the next best practice. One way of thinking about that or characterizing it, one of my colleagues at USC came up with, which I like, so I stole his overhead. That is, it's the difference between repainting our stripes, those are supposed to be zebras if you're not familiar, and changing our DNA. And in essence, I'm arguing for is we need to change our DNA from an organization that thinks about episodic change as the way to win in a competitive environment to one that looks at continuous change as the way to win. The difference being episodic change looks for periods of stability and then a big change effort followed by another period of stability. Continuous change says, hey, that's just not right. We often fail to make changes when we do the episodic, and they're often too late. What we need is continuous change that reflects what's going on in the business. Yes, sometimes you may end up as a fast follower instead of a leader, but other times you want to end up as a leader, first mover. What the organization needs, though, is the ability to recognize what future holds, what you need to do to win in the future, and to get appropriate internal changes in place to match what's going on and anticipate what's going on with competitors and with the environment. Okay. So more change, continuous change, not episodic change. What's it take to do that? Well, I think it takes an organization that has agility and sustainability built into its design, into its leadership, and yield constant levels of financial return, social benefits, and environmental health. Tough design challenge, a different one than we've historically thought of in terms of what it takes to be an organization that's effective. And I would argue it presents a tremendous opportunity for HR professionals to influence the direction corporations take, how people are treated, how performance is measured, and how organizations are designed, not to mention how they change and how they're built to change. Of course, to influence that, going to need very knowledgeable, very skilled HR professionals. To me, that's the challenge and the future, potentially, for HR. I think over the next decade, there's a tremendous opportunity for HR to be transformed as a profession to a new set of competencies and a new set of contributions to how organizations are managed and run. Somebody's going to fill that need. If it isn't HR, I think HR ultimately will be a loser. It'll end up as more of an administrative function rather than a strategic contributor. So part of what I want to talk about this morning is that issue. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little more about organization design and what it needs to look like in order to continuously change and meet a triple bottom line set of conditions. Let's look at that. What do they need? What do organizations need? Well, certainly a future focus based on shared purpose and a change-friendly identity to create the kind of strategies that were discussed earlier. It's one thing to say we're going to create them, of course, it's another to get them implemented. But let me just stick with creating them for a moment. All kinds of research suggests that you get the best innovation in strategy when organizations have what we call a maximum surface area design and flexible internal resource allocation systems. That is, they have a lot of people and a lot of pieces of the organization that are in touch with the competitive environment, that understand what's going out and bring information going on and bring information into the organization about what's happening in the external world with competitors and customers. That calls for particular kinds of organization design as well as particular kinds of hiring practices. Okay. In addition, of course, it needs flexible allocation structures. We'll talk about this more when we get to HR, but one criticism of HR often is that its systems that it argues for are not flexible. Too often I find HR argues for rigid job descriptions, rigid salary structures, lack of ability to cross-train people and move people easily. One CEO I was talking to the other day said, I call my HR function my BPU. I said, what's a BPU? He says, a business prevention unit. Okay. What is that? Why? I did follow up and I said, why is it a BP unit? Because most of what it tells me is why I can't do something. Rarely does it tell me what I could do, can do, and should do, and help me solve a problem when I want to make a change. Okay. I'm afraid all too often that's where, at least in the States, I see a lot of organizations, internal HR functions ending up. Okay. Shared leadership, I'll talk more about that in a minute, but there won't be, everyone says it, but let me just put it up there for sure, well-developed change, learning, and innovation capabilities. When you don't get creative strategies, you don't get implementation unless the organization has those capabilities. How does it get those capabilities? Through the kind of talent it recruits, the kind of structures it puts in place, kind of communications processes it has, kind of training and development experiences it offers its people. Well, Chris, what happened there? Skipped one. Okay. When Chris Wall and I wrote our book, Management Reset, we broke it down into 4 ways that organizations need to operate in order to be sustainable and effective. Thinking about the way value is created, that is the strategy, the way work is organized, I already mentioned that, the way talent is treated, and the way behavior is guided. All of those are things where HR comes very strongly into play. I want to just quickly go through those and then turn to look at the design of the HR function. Way value is created. And this is very much, so I'll be quick here, what you've already heard, and that is there's always another strategy. You need some values, some identity that's constant, but you also need to be open to change with a future focus and an identity that capitalizes on changes in strategy, because no strategy is going to survive very long in these days, in this era. You can't have the famous sustainable competitive advantage in most businesses for very long. They simply don't exist. The trick is not to look for one, it's to look for the next temporary competitive advantage. What you can keep constant is your identity as an organization. These are just a couple of examples of the kind of identities that some large corporations have built for themselves. I couldn't help but to notice a few Starbucks as I came in on the cab last night. Looks like they have arrived here with their identity and with their coffee, yes, all over the place. And they have a pretty well-developed identity. What are they offering? They seem to be successful. It's pretty amazing, actually, how successful they've been globally. If you ask them, they say, what we offer is great experiences, right? Part of it is the coffee, part of it is the setting. And yes, we've made some mistakes. We expanded too fast. We went into food, and food didn't turn out to be a very good experience in a lot of Starbucks. So we pulled back on that. But they've done a nice job of being agile in their strategy with the identity of we're a good employer, we treat our employees well, we're good in that area, we're socially responsible, we're environmentally responsible. All that's part of our identity. If you look at Starbucks, you get that. And we're flexible when it comes to parts of our strategy. We have it, but we keep an identity. We have a long-term identity. You may have noticed the CEO just recently, not since it's more U.S. politics, but the CEO who retired and returned, basically the CEO has now advised corporations that they should not contribute to political campaigns this time. That that's pretty dysfunctional in the United States electoral process, and he's put himself out there as opposing that. Couple more identities. Let me just move on. I talked about startups. There's a little difference time between when I click and when technology, as I said earlier, technology drives us crazy sometimes, but also drives us somewhere most of the time. Unfortunately, it is this way. Okay, let's look a little bit further at the ways and pick up the next one, and that is the way work is organized. And this refers back to, and I think ties very much to what I was saying about the role of information technology. We're just beginning to learn how to reorganize corporations with the information technology capabilities that we have now. But I think there's some pretty clear directions in which it's heading. One certainly is more focus on activities, what somebody's doing at the moment and will be doing, instead of on jobs. I think the idea of jobs is pretty obsolete. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, particularly if it's a rigid job description. I suppose I could ask my favorite question, how many of you all who work in large corporations have up-to-date job descriptions? If you do, you're in big trouble, because it means you're not changing fast enough. If you try to keep your job descriptions up to date, that's a full-time job for the organization, and probably one that will lead to few, if any, developments. What ought to be up to date is the goals that people are striving toward and things that they're supposed to accomplish. That's different than the activities that they're supposed to be engaged in. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to performance review, but in any case, the work systems need to be, in many cases, the product of complex, multi-stakeholder teams. Many of those teams are starting to be virtual, and I think that's going to grow dramatically, just like superior-subordinate relationships are increasingly virtual, and people need to learn how to lead and manage virtual work teams, virtual relationships, etc. Most work systems are temporary and need to be iterative, and yes, we're getting better at supporting them with the right physical space and technology, but I think we're just learning. I don't know if any of you have been in any of the Cisco telepresence, virtual presence systems, but they're very impressive pieces of technology. Most people I find that have been in meetings with them, and I've been in a few, find it almost like having everybody in the same room. The definition of the pictures is so good, the sound is so good, that you feel like you're actually in a working group, even though people are scattered around the world. And of course, those work systems need to be managed strategically. What does that mean for performance management? Well, I cover a lot of this in my book on talent, but of course, just mention a little bit of it. I don't think there's any question that you need a performance management system that does some key things. This is in contrast to a lot of readings and books that you see out now, at least I see in the States, that says you should abandon performance appraisal. It's more trouble than it's worth, it alienates people, it irritates people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Most managers don't do it well anyway, and they don't want to do it, and HR ends up being a cop running around saying, when did you get your performance appraisal done, et cetera, et cetera. I think those are accurate criticisms, but that doesn't mean you should abandon it. To me, it means you should improve it and get it in tune with the realities of what work is like today and what people need to do in order to execute that work. And that means, in my mind at least, increasingly being goal-oriented, being flexible, certainly linked to performance, but in particular ways. And I won't go through all the specifics that are up there, but let me just ask a question. How many people here use some kind of 360 appraisal? That is, people around, not too many, no? Yeah, a couple. Key issue with those, and it's debated, and I think it's a legitimate debate, is whether you use the 360 appraisal of a manager for reward purposes or not. I see companies split on that. Some say, okay, that's going to drive your pay raise and your promotion. And I see others say it's just for development purposes. It's just to give feedback to the person about the quality of their performance. Having looked at that now in a number of different firms, my pretty strong conclusion is probably should just be used for feedback purposes. That when it becomes a source or a basis for rewards of promotion or money or stock or whatever it is, too often it becomes political and instrumental in the hands of the person doing the 360. Ultimate on that is Goldman Sachs, which has a statistical formula to correct 360-degree ratings for potential bias because people are competing for the same job or for the same salary increase. So they go ahead and collect the data and say they're going to use it, but they've got a algorithm that they developed that adjusts the favorableness of the rating for potential biases because two people are in a certain competitive relationship. They're the only one I know in the world that does that. And obviously, it took a lot of research, and also the fact that they collect something like 300,000 360 appraisals each year. So we've got a large statistical base. Small side point. Okay. Interesting issue, though, I think, is because as we form these new types of work, new aggregations of people, often their performance is not seen by the same traditional group of people that used to see it. That is a hierarchical management structure. It's seen by peers, it's seen by subordinates, and a big issue is how do you take that into account in evaluating a person, in developing a person, and in rewarding. Well, I think I've singled these out as SMO, strategic management, sustainability management talent principles, because I think they go beyond typical talent principles. And you just heard actually some praise for Lincoln Electric, which is a firm I've actually studied. It's been around for 30 or 40 years. That's 30 or 40 years in the literature as an example of a really winning company. It goes back to before World War II. And it has very much of a career management orientation. Like Procter & Gamble in the U.S., which still does, and like many Asian companies that I've worked with, Honda, particularly the Japanese companies. The assumption there is that the best way to manage your talent, get commitment from your talent, and develop your talent is to engage in a kind of marriage. If you do okay, the company will look after you, it'll take care of you. If it needs new skills, it'll retrain or move you, it'll develop you, and in essence, it's a development from within. I was at a conference the other day, and somebody from GE was talking about how they practice that approach to career development, career management, talent management. Somebody, Peter Capelli, was a colleague of mine, a friend of mine at Wharton School, stood up and said, you're the last man standing. In American, that means you're way out of date and obsolete because everybody's moved beyond you. What they move to is what I call a travel light. That is assuming that the workforce that you have will be engaged in what I would call serial monogamy. That is brief one-night stands, if you will, based on their skills and that organization's need for you. No commitment from the organization beyond that. As long as we need you, we'll pay you well, treat you well. But when we don't need you, you're gone. And expecting from the employee strong commitment, strong performance, as long as they feel that's the best place for them to be. Increasingly, I see that as the basic talent contract in large corporations that are facing change, particularly if they're in a technology world. Not the old lifetime locked-in IBM approach. Even IBM, which was often pictured years ago as the ultimate good employer because of the long-term relationships it promised its employees and credit, security, et cetera, has completely abandoned that approach now. Not only have they said, you're here as long as we need you, they've said, career management is now your responsibility, not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to give you information, give you support when you decide what you want to learn, and to give you as much information as we can give you about where we're going, what jobs are available, what jobs are open, but we're not going to tell you where to go. We're not going to be your career guide. A pretty radical change. It's taken about 8 to 10 years to pull it off and get them in place, but it's possible now because even for an organization that big, we have about 400,000 employees now, with information technology, both facilitating that kind of career model and requiring it, because they are an information technology firm, and they know that skills quickly become outdated and that they need to constantly be changing their capabilities and their performance behaviors. Okay. How does that relate to rewards? Well, ties clearly, and I won't go through all of these, but I think it's particularly the top one. Increasingly, organizations are moving to paying the person, not the job. I've argued for this for 30 years because I've never seen a job move from one company to another. So paying the job fairly often doesn't lock the job into a company, and you don't need to do it. But people move. They move not because of the job they're in, but because of the skills they have. And of course, most organizations hire people because of the skills they have, not because of the job they want to fill. Okay. So the argument, particularly with the newer kinds of relationships, the built to change kind of thinking, is let's pay people based on their skills and, of course, how the market values those skills. My colleague John Ming-Jer, who's done a lot of work on critical positions and critical people in organizations, would take that one step further. He says, you've got to figure out what the critical skill sets are for the success of your business strategy. Pay those people more than you pay anyone else relative to the market for their skills. Let me say that again. Pay people who have critical skills for your organization's success more than people who have other skills, even though they may be highly skilled in that area. Executing that, of course, requires identifying what areas are difference makers in your business strategy. He likes to use kind of a simple example, but an interesting one of Disney, Walt Disney and Disney Parks. And they did an analysis there of critical positions. What positions really in the parks made the difference between good visits by their customers and bad visits by their customers? What was the difference maker? A lot of people say, well, it's probably Minnie Mouse or Mickey Mouse in the character, so we got to be sure we pay people who are good Minnie Mouses and Mickey Mouses more than anybody else, and put them way up and pay everybody else okay, but not exceptional. Well, once they started interviewing customers and talking about what made for a good experience, and looking at the variance in performance of people in the roles they had, turned out that Mickey and Minnie Mouse were fine, but one's as good as another. And all they do is run around in costumes. They don't interact with customers. They don't engage customers in any meaningful way. And that when they talked to customers, what they found out was often it was the sweepers who were the difference makers. Because they talked, interacted with the guests, told them where they could go to get a restroom or to get out of the sun and so forth and so on. The strategy implementation then for them in terms of improving the customer experience was to invest more in their sweepers and how they are trained, developed, and selected than they did in the Mickey and Minnie Mouses of the world. Not an obvious look, but one that with metrics and analytics, the HR function was able to come up with to improve the experience people have, customers have, in the Disney parks. Okay. We just move on for a moment to the last one, and that's the leadership issue. I think we're really seeing a rethinking of leadership, at least in the West. Now, I've been saying this for a while, so I run the risk of being wrong again, but I think we're getting tired of the idea that some great leader can come around, walk around with tremendous amount of arrogance and change the very nature and direction of corporations. That used to be true. Many of them were successful, many of them failed. But with the new forms of organizations, the new reality around information technology and social networking and so forth, I think we're at the end of the superordinate, iconic leader. What we need now is more of a shared leadership model where people are jointly deciding what the direction of the company will be, with leaders and with leaders peering throughout the organization. I think the new CEO at Unilever says it quite well. People throughout the organization can be leaders. We need companies of leaders, not companies headed by leaders. With distributed work, virtual work relationships, etc., that makes more and more sense to me. What do you need to do to get shared leadership? Well, part of it certainly is senior management support for management training, management development throughout the organization, top to bottom. Also providing people top to bottom with the kind of information and leadership moments that they can take advantage of. But they need communications and they understand the business and the business strategy in order to step up when those moments occur. One of the ways I tend to think about it is leadership opportunities, leadership moments are everywhere in organizations. It may just be say, hey, to one worker saying to another, hey, you didn't pay attention to what that customer said. You really should have listened. Or it may be, hey, we should be doing this. Our strategy, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We're not doing it. Those kind of leadership actions need to be present throughout an organization. In order to get them, that has to be part of the culture, part of the reward system, part of the training system. Okay. Let me just skip that for a moment and move on. I want to get to the HR piece. Okay. I talked a little more than I planned on the strategy and how we ought to think about it. Excuse me for that. I did leave a few minutes at the end for HR. So everyone still like to hear what I actually have data on HR, so numbers, results. Let me just take for a moment where this all starts from. For the last years, actually 15, I've been collecting data until recently just within the United States, although the last survey we did in 2010 included an international sample. We added China, Australia, we're just doing India, the UK, Europe, and I said Australia and the United States. So we now have a somewhat global sample of HR executives and line managers reacting to how HR is performing. Not surprisingly, this started in 1995 with the feeling and a lot of articles saying HR was not doing very well. And the famous saying, of course, was it wants a seat at the table. And I guess I cheated a little bit here saying, yeah, okay, what kind of seat does it want? And I argued, at least in my writings, that they don't really want to just, it shouldn't aspire just to a seat at the table, they should aspire to setting the table. And interestingly enough, that's what I particularly enjoyed about the previous talk. That, in essence, is what he was arguing for. Because what did he say HR should be doing? It should be driving strategy, making inputs to strategy, not just be an implementer of strategy. Well, all too often, HR has not been very active in strategy at all. It spent too much of its time on its first line of business, a little bit on its second line of business, and not very much on its third line of business. So if you think of HR in large corporations, it is a business. It's got 3 product lines, all of which can be outsourced. You really don't need an HR function at all in some respects in a corporation, inside. And a lot of people will do all the administrative services for you, call centers, et cetera, around the world. Certainly, there's been a strong argument coming out of many of my colleagues in the U.S. about, okay, well, you need to be a business partner. You need to help the organization implement plans, activities, et cetera, not just say what you can't do. Okay, but I set the bar higher than that, and I think we did earlier this morning as well. Strategic partner role calls for contributing to business strategy based on considerations of human capital and organization capabilities, readiness, etc. In other words, HR ought to be a driver of strategy and strategy implementation. All too often, it is not. Let me just try a little more of the distinction between being a business partner and being a strategic player. Okay. Business partner just understands the business strategy, supports it with recommended practices, organization designs, and change management to help implement. Skip one now. A strategic contributor or a strategic player uses human capital and business data to influence what the strategy is, and then also helps with the implementation. Well, clearly, if you're looking at the HR magazines, what's been hot now for the last 2 or 3 years is arguments around what metrics and analytics should you be gathering as an HR function, what you should be looking at. Most of those articles look a little too much at just cost of HR services and delivery and quality of delivery, but some of them are pointing out that there are critical metrics that you can get that will influence strategy. That is, such things as, what are the critical positions in the organization? What are the things we execute well? Who executes them well? What do we need to do to execute them well? How do they pay off in terms of bottom line results? That's ultimately, I think, where HR needs to go. And of course, it needs to be able to consult input to the organization about how you make that strategic contribution present and an important piece of the organization. Okay. Let's look at how HR is doing using the data now. This is our 2010 data. And we asked the same question we asked first in 1995, and we ask, what is your time allocation? How much do you spend maintaining records, auditing, controlling, as a services provider, as the development of HR systems, and as a strategic business partner? Well, it looks pretty good, at least in terms of improvement. Right? 5 or 7 years ago, we only spent 14% of our time as a strategic business partner, but today we spend 27% of our time. Right? Incidentally, from a global comparison point of view, when we asked this in the list of companies I said earlier, all of them were similar on this with the exception of China. China reported much less strategic business partner activity and much more administrative activity. They were the only country that consistently stood out as low strategy involvement. Okay. That looks pretty good, but then there's a little issue here of what's happened over time. Every time we've asked that question, we've gotten the same answer. That is, we've gotten better than we used to be. And the data would say we have not really gotten better. They remember the past as worse than it was and say in the present, we're better. But if you compare what this says, for example, in 2004 with what I showed you earlier, you will see that, in fact, not going backwards. Yeah. That 5 to 7 years ago doesn't match that 5 to 7 years ago. And everybody would, I think, agree that the most valid data about what's going on now is what people tell you is going on now, not what they think was going on now 5 years later. So I would argue, based on these data at least, that HR really hasn't changed over the last 15 years in how it spends its time. Despite decades now of beating up on HR and people complaining about HR not being strategic enough, not really driving the business, doesn't really seem to have changed. No progress. Oh, here we go. Another question is basically in the same ballpark is, what's your role in strategy? Are you a full partner or just an input implementation role? And again, the data haven't changed since 1998, which was the first time we asked that question. Majority of the companies, the most frequent role is input to strategy, not as a full partner in the strategy development process. And that really hasn't changed since 1998. So despite, I think, a lot of writing and a lot of thinking and potentially a lot of change in the environment that should lead HR to be more of a strategic player, it doesn't seem to be making it happen. So we then ask a series of questions about what HR does in strategy, in the strategy area. All of these are things that would argue HR should and could be doing. In most cases, they are not doing them to a great extent. A moderate extent is the most common answer here. And probably the lowest, interesting enough, if you look at that, is the two data-based items. Does HR use data-based talent strategy? Pretty low score, just to some extent, not even a moderate extent. Does HR make rigorous database decisions about human capital management? No, relatively low score on that as well. What it also shows by those correlations over there, the 44 and the 34 and the stars, is that the more they do these things, the more they're seen as and are a strategic partner in the organization's influence of strategy. We ask, what's your role? That's the previous question, in strategy, and then we ask, what do you do? Do these things, the data say, and you will have a partnership role in strategy development. Pretty clear indication of what you need to do. Okay. Oh, skip one there, one skip by. Go back, go back. Please go back. Okay. Well, I conclude that the, whoops. Now I have more sympathy for the previous speaker. Okay. I know I can get it. Okay, full partner. Okay, let's charge ahead. I give up. What does it say? Essentially, what it says is that HR would like to be more of a strategic partner. That is, it would like to do more to drive change. They say they're going to do more. That's the difference between the two columns here. They'd like to integrate business strategy more with a human capital strategy. They'd like to develop. They plan on doing that. But if you look at the first column there, which is to the extent that they do it, they say they're not doing it. So in some sense, HR confesses to be a wannabe. The key issue is, are they going to be a will be? That is, will they be able to convert that into actual change? It's not a strategic contributor, but it wants to be one. Okay. Let's look at some of the things they might do, HR might do, to really become a strategic partner. The one, I would argue, is to get some sense of return, financial return, for their activities and their investments. I can remember very clearly sitting in there with the CEO and the HR VP and a couple other VPs in a large corporation in which the CEO was saying to the HR VP, who came in with a number of proposals and costs associated with it, said, okay, I see all those. They sound good. What's the ROI going to be on those? And the HR VP said, we haven't figured that out. I don't know. But, you know, I don't think we can because it's sort of soft data and, you know, it'd be hard to find the numbers and it would take some guesstimates. And CEO said, yes, yes. And how does that differ from the ones I get from marketing? The implication, of course, is that much of the data CEOs face on return on investment is soft. still comes, may not be the compelling reason why they make a decision, but it's on the table. HR typically doesn't tend to come with those kinds of data, and as a result, it often doesn't get heard as much as it should. What kind of things are possible? Well, back to the metrics and analytics. Now, the midpoint on this scale is 3, so that means just that you do it somewhat effectively. All those are things that should be done very effectively, and as you can see, most of them, particularly identifying talent with the greatest potential for strategic impact, what we talked about earlier, making decisions that reflect your company's competitive position, connecting human capital practices to organizational performance, all of those correlate with HR being an important player in the strategy area. Okay, let me just look at a couple of changes, and then I have a few minutes left for questions. What's changed? Well, there are a few things that have changed. The structure of HR organizations, at least in the ones we've studied, has changed, particularly with respect to service teams. That is, more and more there are corporate HR functions that are tied to business strategy development and offering services. The classic sort of front-back organization, or whatever you want to call it, that Dave Lawler has been talking about for 10, 15 years. Yeah, that has happened. Organizations are creating centers of excellence at the corporate level, and they are creating administrative services. That has increased. And that is somewhat related to HR's role and strategy. The more organizations have gone to that model, the more HR is a partner. What happens, though, I believe, is you've got critical HR expertise at the corporate level, close to decision makers, and as a result, HR has more influence. The other thing that's changed is the use of information technology. No question that many of the HR systems are now online in corporations. People can do administrative duty, jobs, activities, et cetera, online, get information, et cetera. And that, too, is related to HR's role and strategy. But the thing that's more strongly related to human resource organizations' effectiveness and role and strategy is developing the HR talent itself. That is, spending money on developing good HR knowledge and expertise in the organization. That is strongly related to HR's role and strategy, but it hasn't changed since we started doing the survey. Particularly in the United States, HR is classic, do what I say, not what I do, when it comes to development and talent recruitment. HR doesn't recruit the best talent it can, in many cases. It doesn't develop the talent in the function. It doesn't rotate people. It doesn't pay HR people for their skills. It tells other parts of the organization to do those things for its employees. Not surprisingly, because it hasn't improved that, it hasn't grown in the way it should to be a strategic contributor at this point in history. One of the things we looked at were key issues that related to HR effectiveness, that is, the overall effectiveness of the HR organization. The two most strongly correlated were the adoption of information technologies, we know something that has changed, and the use of service teams, that is, corporate centers of excellence and administrative centers. Those are strongly related to HR effectiveness. Took it one step further and said, okay, what's related to organizational effectiveness? That is, what are the characteristics of HR organizations that are associated with particularly effective organizational performance? 6 stood out for us. Similar themes. The more time the HR organization spends on strategy, the more effective the organization is. The more integrated the talent strategy is with the business strategy, the more effective the organization is. The more HR talent development takes place, the more effective the organization is. More information technology, human resource information systems are present, the more effective the organization is. The more talent decisions are based on metrics and analytics, the more effective the organization is. And finally, the more decisions and behavioral science knowledge is used to make human capital decisions, the more effective the organization is. So if you're looking for takeaways, if you will, let's say, what should my HR organization do? To me, that's the best list I can come up with. It says key areas where HR organizations should be effective, and when they are more effective in that area, it pays off. To do that, there's a whole bunch of new skills needed, and I won't go through the competencies needed. I'll really leave you with one last thought, though. If I look at the themes that are around when I talk to HR people, what I hear sort of merging in their mindset. Right? One is employer brand. Very much relates, of course, to human capital management and attraction and all that. But increasingly, I talk to organizations are saying, we're thinking about our employer brand, we're trying to get it accurate, we're trying to get it on target, we're trying to get it out there, we're using social media to do it, we're entering things like best place to work to do it. And we see two advantages. One, of course, is it improves our applicant pool, but it also starts to socialize them in what it's like to work for the organization. And it gives them a realistic preview of what it's like to work here. There's an enormous amount of data, going back 50 years, that says realistic previews of what it's like to work somewhere are a terrific determinant of how satisfied employees will be once they get there, how committed they are to the organization ultimately. What you need to know is let people understand what it's like to work there. My favorite example of that, if you haven't seen it, is Netflix, which I know doesn't operate over here yet, but watch out, they'll be here fairly soon. They sell online movies and so forth, and put Blockbuster out of business in the United States just in the last couple of years. They have a website for job applicants, and it lists on 100 PowerPoints what the characteristics are of working there and what they expect from employees. And it's fun. Quite interesting. And I was doing the same session like this for a group of employees in PepsiCo, and one person online is you're victim to these days a lot as a speaker, and she immediately went to the website for Netflix and pulled up their socialization or realistic job preview and started reading off the PowerPoints that were on there. It was very impressive. It was a very nice make of my points because they say things like, you have a job only as long as we need you. Your reward for performance is keeping your job, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty clear what they expect and how they treat people. Second is mass customization. What do I mean by that? I mean, more and more organizations are treating people differently. That's probably harder in Asia than it is in the United States, but even in the United States, it's tough because there's a lot of feeling, particularly among HR people, that homogeneity is the easiest thing to justify, it's the fairest way to treat people, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't fit with a strategic orientation. It doesn't focus resources on those behaviors of those people that are critical for organizational effectiveness. Then the third thing that I think is a big theme for the future is the whole issue of sustainable effectiveness. That is, how do we not have organizations that have spikes and then disasters? How do we get more sustainable financial performance? How do we get more sustainable environmental performance and social performance? All of those themes, I think, are things that HR is going to have to respond to in the next decade, and are areas where HR can take a real leadership role. I talked more than I expected. Then again, I got a later start than I was asked to. Can you excuse me? But maybe we could skip, if we don't stand too much between food and people? Can we have a couple of questions? Or whoever, we have a master of ceremonies? Or, okay, let's try a couple of questions. I like an arbitrary rule.
It's up to you.
Up to me?
Yeah, up to you.
I can make this big decision?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a couple of questions. I don't want to rob you from that.
You can take 2 or 3 after you.
Thank you for agreeing with everything I said.
Excellent topic, but I just wondered if you've had any work on monetarizing the value of HR function.
That's a good one, yeah. Monetarizing the value of HR functions. Well, most of the stuff that I've seen has really been around the outsourcing decisions that companies are making. And yes, I think there are certainly some there where you have the classic internal versus external supplier, and you can look at it both from a cost and a return point of view. And one of the things that surprised me in that area, just to digress for a moment, I think probably the first book, the study that Dave Ehrlich and I did, and a couple others, on business process outsourcing, where you take the whole package of administrative services and computerization and give it to some vendor. And we studied the first 4 cases with that being done, actually BP and a couple of American companies. And I thought the data were pretty favorable. It seemed like when you outsourced, you got better cost control and better service than when you used internal groups. But subsequent to that, our data from this survey I talked about, which I didn't put up on the PowerPoints, suggests that organizations have not been particularly anxious to go to single source outsourcing. They seem to be doing pieces of the HR activity like salary and payroll and so forth and so on, rather than the total integrated package. And I'm not completely sure why that is, other than the issues of, okay, we really get very dependent. One of the issues I think is you get very dependent on your vendor. It's almost impossible to change if they have all of your HR services. And the first contract might look so good, like pretty good, but when you come back for the renewal, they've got you in a position where the power balance has changed with respect to pricing and so forth. But most of those that have been done have shown improvements in quality and cost reduction. Most recent big contract was Unilever. They just signed the largest outsourcing contract ever signed, over $1 billion, with a 10-year commitment to outsource all of their HR information technology, services, et cetera. It'll be interesting to see. I'm a little perplexed at this point as to what the right answer is, because it probably varies from company to company and situation to situation. It's certainly an active area where I do see, though, back to your question, a lot of cost-benefit analysis going on, both in terms of accuracy, customer satisfaction, and cost. Another question? Yes, sir.
There are some controversial statements also, but
one question I want to ask about the performance management principles. So you said that rate outcomes, rate performance, but don't rank. But don't rank. Ranking.
Oh, on the portfolio all the way back to the one I didn't say anything about. Oh,
yeah, can you elaborate something about it?
Yeah, I could do the whole rest of the afternoon on performance reviews, but just did a new study on it, actually. Yeah, what I was referring to in the rate, not rank, is the phenomena that hit in the United States, and I'm not sure how much it went global, based on GE, of ranking people's performance against each other in some predetermined distribution. In some cases, it's literally ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exxon, now ExxonMobil, the old Exxon, or the old Esso, the oil company, used to rank their people 1 through 3,000. They had 3,000 R&D people in their labs and everything, and they literally came up at the end of the year with somebody was number 1 and somebody was number 3,000, something or other. Okay. GE said more of a called a forced distribution approach, which was 10% top, 70%, 20%, whatever, 20%, some percentage. Each supervisor had to put people into a category with a predetermined distribution. We did it at USC last year, actually. I didn't do it because I refused as a supervisor. But most everybody did it. And you had to put 20%, you had to put 20% of your people at the top, 70% in the next group, and 10% in the bottom. Now, that's 100, and and it didn't matter what your performance of your business unit had been, your area, or how many people you had. I had 6 people. It's kind of hard to distribute them and to assume that they fit that distribution a priori is obviously rather silly, but that's what I was referring to. So, yes, the problem is you get grade inflation, right? Just like in a classroom. Suddenly everybody's getting A's if you're not careful. So you do need some countervailing forces to be sure that you get good differentiation where appropriate. I see more and more companies doing calibration meetings and evaluating managers, which I had up there, on how well they do that process. So if you give me everybody in your unit is an A player, and your unit is an F, I may come back to you and say, I don't think you're a good manager. The problem here may not be your people, it may be you, because you've falsely evaluated them, you've poorly evaluated them, and it shows up in the performance of your unit. On the other hand, if your unit is gangbusters and you just had a blockbuster year, yeah, you could argue that they all deserve a top rating. I've really got a super extraordinary group. But that's the kind of dialogue that I think ought to go on, not the, here, 20% in this group, 70% in this group, and 10% or 5% or whatever it is in the other group. Is that, yeah, that's what you're referring to, yeah. I'll let everybody go to lunch. Oh, yes, thank you.
We wish we could have more time, but time is running out. On behalf of the organization committee as well as the audience, I'd like to say thank you very much for your wonderful, stimulating experience.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thank you once again. Thank you, Professor Lawler and our moderator, Professor Xu. And now we'll have around 1.5 hour lunch break. Today's lunch will be held on the 3rd floor. Please follow the sign to the restaurant. For the afternoon section, please use your program guide to locate the presentation room that you would like to attend. 接下来为午餐时间，用餐地点在3楼，请各位嘉宾依照工作人员指示前往。但请各位凭午餐券兑换餐盒入场。那下午的专题演讲将于1点30分准时开始。敬祝大家用餐愉快。